The summer heat was unforgiving as Mei Lin parked her car outside Riverside National Bank. She checked her watch. 2:15 p.m. Perfect timing, she thought. The lunch rush would be over, and she could quickly withdraw the money she needed and get back to her flower shop before the afternoon delivery arrived. Mei adjusted her simple blue blouse, grabbed her purse, and walked into the air-conditioned building. Her shoulders immediately relaxed in the cool air, but that feeling didn't last long. The bank was packed. Nearly every seat in the waiting area was filled, and the line snaked almost to the door. "You've got to be kidding me," she whispered under her breath. For a moment, Mei considered coming back another day, but she couldn't. The $5,000 she needed to withdraw was for Mr. Rodriguez, her main flower supplier. He was making a special trip to deliver rare orchids for a big wedding that weekend, and he only accepted cash for special orders. If she didn't pay him tomorrow, she'd lose the order and probably her biggest client of the year. So she took her place at the end of the line, pulled out her phone, and sent a quick text to her assistant. "Bank is packed. Might be late getting back. Hold down the fort." The line moved at a snail's pace. One elderly man seemed to have brought his entire life savings to deposit. A woman with twins was opening accounts for both children, the toddlers growing more restless by the minute. A businessman in front of Mei had a stack of checks so thick it looked like a small book. 45 minutes later, her feet aching in her sensible shoes, Mei finally reached the counter. The teller, a young man with round glasses and a name tag that read Raj, greeted her with a tired smile. "How can I help you today?" he asked. "I need to withdraw $5,000 from my business account," Mei said, sliding her ID and bank card across the counter. Raj's smile faltered as he looked at the amount on the withdrawal slip. He typed something into his computer, frowned, then excused himself. "One moment, please." Mei felt a flicker of worry as she watched him walk over to an older woman at a desk in the corner. They spoke in hushed tones, glancing in her direction. After what felt like forever, Raj returned to the counter. "I'm sorry, Ms. Lin, but I can't process this withdrawal today," he said, his voice lowered. "What? Why not?" "I have more than enough in my account," Mei said, trying to keep her voice down despite her rising frustration. "It's bank policy. For withdrawals over $3,000, you need to schedule it 48 hours in advance." Mei blinked in confusion. "I've been banking here for 5 years. I've never heard of this policy before." "It's a security protocol," Raj explained, not quite meeting her eyes. "I really am sorry for the inconvenience." The people in line behind Mei were starting to shift impatiently. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and frustration. "Look, this is an emergency. I need this money for my business. A supplier is coming tomorrow, and I have to pay him in cash." Raj shook his head. "I understand, but there's nothing I can do. The policy is very clear." "Can I speak to a manager, please?" Mei requested, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. "Of course. Please have a seat, and someone will be with you shortly." Mei moved to the waiting area, her mind racing. This didn't make any sense. The money was hers. Her business depended on this payment going through. As she sat there watching other customers being helped, she pulled out her phone and started scrolling through the bank's website, looking for any mention of this supposed policy. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. The bank would close in an hour, and still no manager had come to speak with her. People who had arrived long after her were already leaving, their banking needs met. Just as Mei was about to go back to the counter, a man in an expensive suit emerged from the back office. His face was set in a practiced, neutral expression that didn't reach his eyes. The nameplate on his chest read, "D. Wilson, Branch Manager." Little did he know, Mei Lin wasn't someone who gave up easily, and she was about to make this bank regret the day they decided to keep her money from her. D. Wilson approached with the confidence of someone who rarely heard the word no. His tie was perfectly knotted, his shoes shined to a mirror finish. As he neared, Mei noticed how he glanced at his watch, a subtle but clear signal that her problem wasn't worth much of his time. "Ms. Lin, I understand there's an issue with a withdrawal." His voice had that practiced customer service tone that somehow managed to sound both polite and dismissive at the same time. Mei stood up, extending her hand. "Yes, thank you for coming to speak with me." I need to withdraw $5,000 from my business account for an urgent supplier payment, but your teller says I can't do that without advance notice. I've never encountered this policy before. Wilson barely shook her hand before stepping back. Yes, for security reasons, we require 48 hours notice for withdrawals over $3,000. It's for your protection, really. I've been banking here for 5 years, May said, pulling out her business account folder. I've made larger withdrawals than this without any advance notice. Just last month, I took out $4,200 for my quarterly tax payment. A flicker of annoyance crossed Wilson's face. Well, perhaps the policy wasn't properly enforced then, but I can assure you it's been in our terms of service. May kept her voice level despite her growing frustration. Could you please show me where this policy is written? I have my account agreement right here. She held up her folder. Wilson waved his hand dismissively. It would be in our updated terms, not necessarily in your original paperwork. When were these terms updated? I never received any notification about policy changes. Wilson's professional smile tightened. We send periodic updates via email. Perhaps you missed it. He glanced at his watch again. Now, I'm afraid there's nothing I can do today. You're welcome to submit your withdrawal request for processing on Monday. Monday? May felt her heart sink. That won't work. I need this money tomorrow for a supplier who's traveling from out of state. He only takes cash, and if I don't pay him, I'll lose the order and probably my biggest client. That sounds like poor planning on your part, Ms. Lin. Wilson's tone had an edge to it now. A successful business should always account for banking policies. A couple of nearby customers looked over, curious about the conversation. May felt her cheeks flush, not with embarrassment this time, but with anger. I'd like to see documentation of this policy, please, she said firmly. Wilson sighed audibly. I don't have time to dig through policy documents right now. We're quite busy, as you can see. Then I'd like to speak to someone who does have time. I'm the highest authority in this branch, Ms. Lin. His voice had dropped lower, a warning in his tone. And I've already explained our policy. An older woman in line caught May's eye and gave her a small nod of support. Somehow, that tiny gesture gave May strength. Look, Mr. Wilson, this money is mine. I've trusted your bank with it, and now I need access to it for a legitimate business purpose. I'm not asking for a loan or a favor. I'm asking for my own money. Wilson's face heightened. Banking isn't as simple as your money. There are regulations, policies. Which I'd like to see in writing, May interrupted. The branch manager's eyes narrowed. Several customers were openly watching now. Wilson clearly didn't appreciate being challenged in front of an audience. Perhaps, he said coldly, you should consider banking elsewhere if our policies don't suit your needs. May stood straighter, clutching her folder tight. Perhaps I should, but today I need my $5,000. Not possible. Wilson's tone suggested the conversation was over. I suggest you make other arrangements with your supplier. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have customers waiting. As Wilson turned to walk away, May called after him, So you're refusing to give me access to my own money, is that right? Wilson paused, then turned. I'm enforcing bank policy, Ms. Lin. Have a good weekend. With that, he walked back to his office, leaving May standing there with her unused withdrawal slip and a growing sense of injustice. The bank lobby had gone oddly quiet. Several people were staring at her with expressions ranging from sympathy to curiosity. The older woman who had nodded at her earlier whispered, Don't let them get away with it, honey. May took a deep breath. Wilson thought this conversation was over. But as she gathered her things and walked toward the exit, her mind was already racing with ideas. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Outside in her car, she pulled out her phone. It was time to do some research. If Riverside National thought they could push around a small business owner like her, they were about to learn a very expensive lesson. The drive home from the bank was a blur for May. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The radio played some cheerful pop song that felt completely out of sync with her mood. She switched it off. My own money, she muttered to herself. They're keeping my own money from me. When she reached her small two-bedroom house, May kicked off her shoes at the door and headed straight for her home office. It was really just a converted spare bedroom with a desk, a filing cabinet, and bookshelves overflowing with gardening books and business guides. But right now, it was her war room. She fired up her laptop and opened a new document. At the top, she typed in bold letters, Raivioside National Bank, the fight. Something about seeing the words on screen made her feel more in control. This wasn't just frustration anymore, this was a mission. Okay, where do I start? She asked the empty room. Her cat, Pepper, jumped onto the desk as if answering the call. May scratched behind his ears while she thought. First, she needed to know if this 48-hour notice policy was real or something Wilson had made up on the spot. She pulled out all her banking paperwork from the filing cabinet and spread it across the desk. Account agreements, terms of service, fee schedules, she had kept everything since opening her business account 5 years ago. 2 hours and a pot of tea later, May had gone through every document. Not a single mention of any advance notice requirement for withdrawals. She had even checked her email, searching for those periodic updates Wilson had mentioned. Nothing there either. I knew it, she said to Pepper, who had curled up on a stack of papers. Either he made it up, or they never told me about it. Either way, they can't just keep my money hostage. Next, May turned to the internet. She searched for Riverside National Bank withdrawal policies and found their official website. After 20 minutes of clicking through various pages, she finally found their personal banking FAQ section. There it was in small print at the bottom. For withdrawals exceeding $10,000, customers may be asked to provide 24 to 48 hours notice to ensure branch cash availability. 10,000, May exclaimed, startling Pepper. Not 3,000, 10,000, and May be asked, not required. She took a screenshot and saved it. Curious now, she searched for Riverside National Bank complaints and found herself diving into a rabbit hole of consumer forums and review sites. What she discovered made her blood boil. Dozens of similar stories from other customers, mostly small business owners and elderly people, being denied withdrawals of various amounts, all under mysterious policies that seemed to change depending on who you talk to. One post in particular caught her eye. Has anyone else noticed this happens more at the end of each quarter? Just tried to withdraw $4,000 and was told to come back next week. Same thing happened in March. May checked her calendar. It was June 28, just 2 days before the end of the second quarter. They're holding on to cash for their quarterly reports, she whispered as the pieces fell into place. They're using our money to make their books look better. Her phone rang, breaking her concentration. It was Lei Wei, had a younger brother who worked as a paralegal at a law firm downtown. Hey sis, just checking if we're still on for dinner tomorrow, he said when she answered. Why, you're not going to believe what happened today, May said, and launched into the whole story. Her brother listened quietly, occasionally asking a clarifying question. When she finished, he let out a low whistle. That sounds super sketchy, he said, and possibly illegal. Banks have to give you access to your funds unless there's a legal hold or something suspicious going on. What should I do? I really need that money tomorrow. Let me make a few calls, Wei said. I know someone in the Consumer Protection Division at the Attorney General's office, and in the meantime, I'll come with you to the bank tomorrow morning. First thing, you do that. Are you kidding? Nobody messes with my sister. His voice softened. Besides, remember how you helped me with my rent that time when the firm was late with paychecks? You didn't even hesitate. May felt a lump in her throat. Thanks, Wei. After they hung up, May printed out everything she found, the bank's official policy, screenshots of the complaints, notes from her conversation with Wilson. She organized it all in a folder and set her alarm for 6 a.m. The bank opened at 9, and she planned to be the first one through those doors. That night, as she tried to fall asleep, May's mind kept spinning with worries. What if she couldn't get the money? Mr. Rodriguez would be at her shop at noon tomorrow. The wedding was the following day. If she lost this order, she might lose her biggest client, the Chens, who referred half her wedding business. But beneath the worry was something else, a steely determination. Dee Wilson had picked the wrong person to dismiss. May thought of her parents, who had come to this country with nothing but a suitcase each, working day and night to give her and Wei opportunities they never had. They hadn't raised her to back down from a fight, especially when she was in the right. "Just you wait, Mr. Wilson," she whispered into the darkness. "Tomorrow is going to be a very different conversation." Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen blinds as May sipped her coffee and reviewed her notes one last time. She'd barely slept, but adrenaline kept her alert. The folder beside her contained everything she found: printouts, screenshots, and a list of questions she wasn't leaving without answers to. The doorbell rang precisely at 7:30 a.m. May opened the door to find Y standing there, looking every bit the legal professional in his navy suit and polished shoes. Unlike her usual casual attire for the flower shop, May had also dressed up in her best blazer and tailored pants, clothes she normally saved for meeting with wedding clients. "You look ready for battle," Wei said with an approving nod. "I feel ready," May replied, picking up her folder. "But first, there's something else I want to do." She led her brother to the kitchen table where her phone sat propped against a stack of books. "I want to record our conversation at the bank. Is that legal?" Wei thought for a moment. "In this state, yes. We have one-party consent laws, which means as long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, that's us, it's perfectly legal." "Good," May said, downloading a recording app on her phone. "Because I want everything on record." They arrived at Riverside National 15 minutes before opening. Already, a small line had formed outside the doors. Me and Wei took their place at the end. "Remember," Wei whispered, "stay calm but firm. Don't let them rush or intimidate you." Me nodded, clutching her folder. Inside her pocket, her phone was already recording. At exactly 9 a.m., a security guard unlocked the doors. May walked purposefully to the shortest line, Wei a half step behind her. The teller was a middle-aged woman May hadn't seen before. "Good morning," May said pleasantly. "I need to make a withdrawal from my business account." She slid her ID and bank card across the counter. The teller, whose name tag read Gloria, typed something into her computer. "And how much will you be withdrawing today?" $5,000. Gloria's fingers paused over the keyboard. "That's quite a large sum. Let me just check something." She picked up a phone and spoke quietly into it, her eyes occasionally darting to May and Wei. "Here we go," Wei murmured. A few minutes later, a familiar figure emerged from the back office, D. Wilson, looking significantly less pleased than yesterday. His eyes narrowed when he spotted Wei. "Ms. Lin," Wilson said stiffly, "I believe we discussed this matter yesterday." "Yes, we did," May replied evenly. "And I've done some research since then that I'd like to share with you." She opened her folder. "But first, I should introduce my brother, Li Y Lin. He's a paralegal at Goldstein and Harper Downtown." Wei extended his hand, which Wilson reluctantly shook. "Perhaps we should discuss this in my office," Wilson suggested, eyeing the growing line behind them. "That would be perfect," May agreed. Wilson's office was small but immaculately organized. Golf trophies lined a shelf behind his desk, and framed certificates covered one wall. He gestured for them to sit in the two chairs facing his desk. "Now, Ms. Lin," he began in a patronizing tone, "as I explained yesterday." "Mr. Wilson," May interrupted, placing her folder on his desk and opening it. "Yesterday you told me that Riverside National requires 48 hours notice for withdrawals over $3,000. Is that correct?" "Yes, that's our policy for security." "Then perhaps you can explain why your own website states that advance notice is only suggested for withdrawals exceeding $10,000, not required for amounts as low as $3,000. May slid the printed screenshot across his desk. Wilson glanced at it, his confident expression faltering slightly. "Well, individual branches have discretion to implement additional security measures." "Interesting," Wei chimed in. "And are these additional measures communicated to customers in writing?" "We send regular updates." "Like these?" May pulled out her complete account statements for the past 6 months. "I've gone through every communication from Riverside National. There's no mention of any change to withdrawal policies." Wilson shifted in his chair. "Look, Ms. Lin, these policies are in place to protect our customers." "From accessing their own money?" Wei asked mildly. "From fraud and theft," Wilson snapped, color rising in his cheeks. Mai pulled out another document. "I also found something else interesting. Dozens of complaints from other Riverside National customers who were denied withdrawals of various amounts, all coincidentally happening near the end of financial quarters. Wilson's face hardened. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," May said calmly. "I'm stating facts. Your bank's published policy doesn't match what you told me. You can't provide any written notice of a policy change. And this pattern of denying withdrawals at quarter end raises serious questions about your cash management practices." She leaned forward slightly. "Now my supplier will be at my shop at noon today. I need my $5,000, my money, to pay him. So we have two options here. You can process my withdrawal right now, or my brother can help me file formal complaints with the Banking Commission and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau this afternoon." The office fell silent. Wilson stared at May, then at Wei, then at the documents spread across his desk. The carefully constructed authority he'd wielded yesterday was crumbling. "Give me a moment," he finally said, picking up his phone. He dialed an extension, turned his chair slightly away from them, and spoke in a low voice. Wei gave Mai a supple thumbs up under the desk. She felt a flutter of hope. After a brief conversation, Wilson hung up and turned back to face them. "Ms. Lin," he said, his tone notably different, "it appears there may have been some miscommunication regarding our withdrawal policies. I've spoken with our regional operations manager and will be able to process your withdrawal immediately." Mai maintained her composure, though inside she wanted to jump up and cheer. "Thank you. I appreciate that. If you'll follow me to the teller window, we can take care of this right away." As they stood to leave, Mai paused. "One more thing, Mr. Wilson. I'd like written confirmation that my understanding of Riverside National's actual withdrawal policy is correct for future reference." Wilson hesitated, then nodded stiffly. "I'll have that prepared while you complete your transaction." 10 minutes later, Mai stood at the counter, counting $5,000 in crisp bills while Wei watched over her shoulder. In her pocket, her phone continued recording every word. Mai stepped out of the bank into the late morning sunshine, the envelope with $5,000 safely tucked into her purse. The weight of it against her side felt like victory. Wei walked beside her, a proud smile on his face. "I can't believe that worked," Mai said, finally letting out the breath she felt like she'd been holding since yesterday. "Believe it," Wei replied. "You did your homework, stood your ground, and didn't let him bulldoze you. That's how you win these battles." They reached Mei's car, and she unlocked it with a beep. Before getting in, she turned to her brother and gave him a tight hug. "Thank you for coming with me. I don't know if I could have faced him alone again." Wei hugged her back. "You absolutely could have, but you shouldn't have to." He pulled back and checked his watch. "I've got to get to the office. Call me later and let me know how it goes with your supplier." "Will do," Mai promised. As she drove to her flower shop, Flowering Dreams, Mai replayed the morning's events in her mind. The way Wilson's face had changed when she presented her evidence. The phone call he'd made. Most satisfying of all was the signed letter he'd reluctantly provided, clearly stating that advance notice was only recommended for withdrawals over $10,000, not required for smaller amounts. She parked behind her shop and took a moment to text her assistant, Kathy. "Got the money. Be there in 5. The bell above the door jingled as Mai entered the shop. The sweet scent of fresh flowers enveloped her instantly. This morning, before meeting Wei, she'd come in early to set up the day's arrangements. Now, several completed bouquets waited in the refrigerated display case, and colorful blooms filled the buckets along the walls. "There you are." Kathy looked up from where she was helping an elderly customer choose flowers. "Mrs. Patel, I'll be right with you. Let me just check with my boss." Kathy handed Mrs. Patel a catalog of sympathy arrangements to browse and hurried over to Mai. At 62, Kathy had come to work for Mai after retiring from teaching, saying she needed something to keep her busy. Her warm personality and careful attention to detail made her perfect for the flower business. "Did everything work out at the bank?" Kathy whispered. Mai patted her purse. "Everything's taken care of." "Is Mr. Rodriguez still coming at noon?" "He called while you were out. He's running about 30 minutes early. Should be here around 11:30. Mai checked her watch. It was just past 10:45. "Perfect. I'll get the order forms ready." While Kathy finished with Mrs. Patel, May went to her small office at the back of the shop. She'd just settled behind her desk when her phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar local number. Flowering Dreams, this is May speaking. Ms. Lin? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. This is Patricia Gonzalez, Regional Director at Riverside National Bank. Do you have a moment to speak? May's heart skipped a beat. Yes, I do. I've just had a concerning conversation with our branch manager, Mr. Wilson, about your experience at our bank yesterday and today. I'd like to personally apologize for the inconvenience and misinformation you received. May leaned back in her chair, surprised. I appreciate that, Ms. Gonzalez. This situation never should have happened, Gonzalez continued. I've reviewed the recordings of your conversations. Recordings? May interrupted, confused. You mean my recording? No, Ms. Lin. All interactions in our private offices are recorded for quality assurance. It's mentioned in the small print when you enter the branch. Gonzalez paused. Though I understand you made your own recording as well, which was perfectly within your rights. Oh, May hadn't noticed any signs about recording. I see. After reviewing what happened, I'd like to meet with you, if possible. There are some concerning practices that came to light, and frankly, I'd like to hear more about your experience and those of other customers you mentioned. May thought quickly. I could meet tomorrow afternoon, perhaps. My mornings are usually busy with deliveries. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. would work perfectly. And Ms. Lin, I want to assure you that Mr. Wilson's behavior does not reflect our bank's values or official policies. After hanging up, May sat still for a moment, processing. She hadn't expected this call. She'd been prepared for a fight, not an apology from higher management. The shop bell jingled again. Through her office window, May could see a man in a worn leather jacket entering, carrying a clipboard. Mr. Rodriguez had arrived early with her orchids. May grabbed the envelope from her purse and went out to greet him. The florist supplier had weathered skin from years working in greenhouses and a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Ms. Lin, beautiful day, yes? His accent was still thick despite decades in the country. It is indeed Mr. Rodriguez, and it just keeps getting better. She shook his hand warmly. Let's see those special orchids you promised me. They went out of his van, where he unlocked the back doors to reveal rows of the most delicate purple and white orchids May had ever seen. They were perfect for the Chen wedding, exactly what the bride had requested. These are stunning, she said, carefully examining one of the blooms. For your best customers, only the best flowers, Mr. Rodriguez said proudly. Now shall we do the paperwork? As they counted out orchid pots and finalized the order, May felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not just because she'd secured these beautiful flowers for her client, but because she'd stood up for herself and won. What she didn't know yet was that her conversation with Ms. Gonzalez tomorrow would lead to changes far beyond her own situation. The small victory she'd achieved today was just the beginning of something much bigger. The next day, May arrived at Riverside National 15 minutes early for her meeting with Patricia Gonzalez. This time, instead of the main branch where she'd confronted Wilson, she'd been directed to the regional office downtown, a sleek glass building that made her feel slightly underdressed despite her nicest blouse and slacks. The receptionist, a young man with a friendly smile, greeted her warmly. Ms. Lin? Ms. Gonzalez is expecting you. I'll let her know you're here. Unlike her long wait for Wilson, May had barely settled into a comfortable chair in the waiting area when a door opened and a woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair and a tailored pantsuit appeared. Ms. Lin, I'm Patricia Gonzalez. She extended her hand with a firm grip. Thank you for coming. Please follow me. Patricia led her to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Unlike Wilson's small space cluttered with golf trophies, Patricia's office was minimalist and elegant, with just a few family photos on her desk and a large painting of mountain scenery on one wall. Can I offer you coffee? Tea? Patricia asked as she gestured for May to take a seat. Tea would be lovely, thank you. After requesting 2 teas from her assistant, Patricia sat across from May, her expression serious but kind. Ms. Lin, may I call you May? Of course. May. I want to begin by apologizing again for your experience. What happened was completely unacceptable. Patricia's direct approach was refreshing after Wilson's evasiveness. "I've reviewed all the materials, the recordings, your account history, and the documentation you provided." The assistant brought in 2 steaming mugs of tea and quietly left. "First," Patricia continued, "you should know that Mr. Wilson has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." May paused with her tea halfway to her lips. "That seems serious." "It is. Your case wasn't isolated, I'm afraid." Patricia pulled out a folder. "After our conversation yesterday, I ordered an audit of withdrawal denials at that branch for the past 6 months. What we found was troubling." She opened the folder and slid a graph across the desk. "This shows withdrawal denials by date. Notice anything?" May studied the chart. The line spiked dramatically at the end of each month, with the highest peaks at the ends of March and June. "Quarter ends," May said quietly. "Just like I suspected." Patricia nodded grimly. "Exactly. And almost none of these denials were properly documented. Most cited policy requirements that don't actually exist." She closed the folder. "May, I believe Wilson and possibly others were artificially inflating our branch's cash reserves for monthly and quarterly reports." "Is that illegal?" May asked. "It's definitely against banking regulations and our internal policies. It's deceptive accounting at best and potentially fraudulent at worst." Patricia's expression was grave, which brings me to why I wanted to meet in person. She pulled out an envelope and slid it across the desk. May opened it to find a formal letter of apology on Riverside National letterhead, along with a check. 6 months of waived service fees as compensation for your inconvenience," Patricia explained. "It's the least we can do." May was surprised by the amount, nearly $500. "This is very generous, but not why you took a stand," Patricia finished for her. "I understand. That's why I wanted to discuss something else with you." She leaned forward slightly. "Would you be willing to share the information you gathered about other customers' experiences? It could help us identify who else was affected." May hesitated. "These were just posts I found online, people sharing similar stories." "Even so, it could give us a starting point." Patricia's eyes were earnest. "I take the trust our customers place in us very seriously, May. What happened to you, being denied access to your own funds, undermines the very foundation of banking." Something in her sincerity convinced May. She pulled out her phone. "I saved screenshots of everything I found. I can email them to you." "That would be incredibly helpful." As May forwarded the links and screenshots, Patricia continued, "There's one more thing. We're forming a small business advisory council to review our policies and make them more transparent and business-friendly. After seeing how thoroughly you researched and advocated for yourself, I believe you'd be a valuable addition to that council." May nearly choked on her tea. "Me, but I'm just a florist." "You're a small business owner who stood up to a system that wasn't working properly. That's exactly the perspective we need." Patricia smiled. "It's just quarterly meetings, and members receive a stipend for their time." By the time May left Patricia's office an hour later, her head was spinning. She'd not only received an apology and compensation, but had also agreed to join the advisory council and provide testimonial for their internal investigation. She'd even signed paperwork allowing them to use her recording as evidence if needed. The sun was shining as she walked to her car, and May felt lighter somehow. She'd gone into that bank yesterday just hoping to get her money for the orchids. Now she was potentially helping shape bank policy for other small business owners like herself. Her phone buzzed with a text from Wei. "How did the meeting go?" May smiled as she typed back, "Better than I could have imagined. Call you later with details." As she drove back to her shop, May thought about the Chen wedding scheduled for tomorrow. The orchids from Mr. Rodriguez were already being incorporated into the bridal bouquet and centerpieces. Everything was coming together beautifully. She pulled into her parking spot behind Flowering Dreams and noticed a familiar face waiting by the back door, Mrs. Chen, mother of the bride. May. The elegant older woman rushed forward. "My daughter just called. The wedding coordinator showed her pictures of the sample arrangements you sent over. The orchids are magnificent, exactly what she hoped for." May beamed with pride. "I'm so glad she's happy." "More than happy, overjoyed." Mrs. Chen squeezed May's hand. You went above and beyond. I don't know how you found such perfect flowers on such short notice. If only she knew, May thought, suppressing a smile. It's what I do, she said simply, making special days unforgettable. As they walked into the shop together to finalize the wedding details, May reflected on the past 2 days. From frustration to victory to unexpected opportunity, all because she'd refused to be dismissed when she knew she was right. The bank had tried to keep her money from her. Now they were the ones who were getting it, in more ways than she could have imagined. 3 months had passed since the standoff at Riverside National Bank. The summer heat had given way to crisp autumn air, and May's flower shop was decorated with chrysanthemums and dahlias in rich fall colors. The bell above the door jingled as May arranged a display of orange and burgundy blooms. "Good morning. Welcome to Flowering Dreams," she called without looking up. "It looks beautiful in here," said a familiar voice. May turned to find Patricia Gonzalez standing in her shop, dressed in casual weekend clothes instead of her usual business attire. "Patricia, what a nice surprise." May wiped her hands on her apron and came around the counter. "Are you here for flowers or banking?" Patricia laughed. "A bit of both, actually. I was in the neighborhood and wanted to stop by personally." She handed May an envelope. "The official report is complete. I thought you might want to see it before our council meeting next week." May took the envelope, feeling its weight. That was fast. "I thought these investigations usually take longer." "They do, but yours opened the floodgates," Patricia said, walking with May to the small sitting area where customers normally discussed wedding arrangements. "Once we started looking, the evidence was overwhelming." They sat down on the cushioned chairs, and May opened the envelope, pulling out a thick document with Con and FID Intel stamped across the top. "It's just the executive summary," Patricia explained. "The full report is hundreds of pages." May skimmed the first page, her eyes widening. 37 branches. I thought it was just mine. "We found the same pattern across our entire western region," Patricia said, her expression serious. "Quarter-end cash hoarding, withdrawal denials based on non-existent policies, even forged documentation in some cases. It went all the way up to the regional vice president. That's unbelievable." "What's unbelievable is that it might have continued if you hadn't stood your ground that day." Patricia's eyes showed genuine admiration. "Your complaint triggered the first domino." May shook her head, still processing. "Has anything happened to Wilson?" "He's been terminated, along with 8 other branch managers. The VP has been placed on leave pending further investigation." Patricia paused. "But that's not why I came today." She reached into her bag and pulled out a newspaper. It was the local business journal, folded open to a specific page. "Have you seen this?" May took the paper. There, in the community section, was a headline that made her breath catch. "Local florist inspires banking reform." Below it was a photo of May at her shop counter, surrounded by flowers. She remembered the photographer coming by last week, but she hadn't expected this. Wow. She scanned the article, which detailed how her stand against unfair banking practices had led to a major internal investigation and policy overhaul at Riverside National. They interviewed a few other small business owners who had similar experiences, Patricia said. "The story's getting traction. The Banking Commission has reached out to us, and our CEO is calling for a full audit of all our regional practices." May looked up from the paper. "This is much bigger than I expected when I just wanted my $5,000. That's how change often happens. One person refuses to accept what's wrong." Patricia smiled. "Which brings me to the other reason I'm here. The first meeting of our Small Business Advisory Council is next Thursday, and I wanted to personally make sure you're still planning to attend." "Absolutely," May nodded. "I've already asked Kathy to cover the shop." "Excellent, because after this article, several other banks have reached out about creating similar councils. They're seeing the value in having small business owners directly involved in policy development." A customer entered the shop, and Kathy emerged from the back room to help them. May watched for a moment, then turned back to Patricia. "You know, when I stood up to Wilson that day, I wasn't thinking about changing banking policies or starting a movement. I just needed to pay my supplier for those orchids. Sometimes the most important changes start that way, with one person solving their own problem." Patricia stood to leave. Oh, I almost forgot to ask. How did the Chen wedding turn out? Mi's face lit up. She walked Patricia to a corkboard near the register where photos of recent events were pinned. Among them was a beautiful shot of a bride in a flowing gown, clutching a cascading bouquet of purple and white orchids. It was perfect, May said proudly. And they've already referred 3 other weddings to me. Sometimes good things come from difficult situations. As Patricia left, another customer entered, a young woman who looked around nervously. Can I help you? May asked. I hope so, the woman said. My name's Tina. I own the bakery 2 blocks over. I saw the article about you and the bank. She hesitated. The same thing happened to me last month. They wouldn't let me withdraw money for payroll. I didn't know what to do. May felt a surge of purpose. Have a seat, Tina. Let me tell you what I learned about bank policies. Later that evening, as Mai closed up shop, she reflected on the strange journey of the past few months. Her small act of standing up for herself had rippled outward, affecting not just her business, but potentially how banks across the region treated small business owners. Her phone buzzed with a text from Y. Saw the article. So proud of you, sis. Mom and Dad would be too. Mi smiled as she turned off the lights in her shop. The sweet scent of flowers lingered in the air as she locked the door. What had started as one of the most frustrating days of her life had turned into something unexpectedly meaningful. Sometimes life's biggest victories came from the smallest stands. And sometimes when someone refused to give you what was rightfully yours, making them regret it wasn't about revenge. It was about creating positive change that helped everyone.